Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination is imperiled after decades-old assault allegations surfaced earlier this week. Joining me now with her analysis of the Kavanaugh allegation drama and the status of his confirmation, I'm joined by Chief Counsel for the Judicial Crisis Network, Carrie Severino. Carrie, thank you for being here. Pleasure to see you. I want to start with this notion that you have an accuser come forward. She doesn't remember a time, she doesn't remember the date, but she claims Brett Kavanaugh forced himself upon her or tried to. We've had this whole back and forth of whether she should testify or not. They gave her a day on Monday. Doesn't look like she's coming forward. Should the FBI investigate? That's her predicate for appearing before the committee.
Well, here's the problem. We had her lawyer came out on Monday at several TV shows and said she's ready to testify. We want to testify.
Right.
Senator Grassley, head of the Judiciary Committee, said, great, let's make this possible. They schedule a hearing. He has bent over backwards to try to make it a circumstance that she will be comfortable with. Does she want to have cameras there or not? Does she want to do it in person, on the phone? He's even said, I'll send people wherever in the world
even
you want.
Private.
In private, yeah, I'll send them to you in California. Do you want to I mean, some people say it should be on TV. So they're willing to do whatever it takes. If it's closed, confidential, that would be fine too. They want an opportunity for her to share her story, and Judge Kavanaugh wants an opportunity to refute these allegations. Unfortunately, we saw after that happened, the very next day, suddenly the goalposts were moved. And it was, and on second thought, we don't want a hearing unless we get an FBI investigation first. Here's the problem. The FBI has done its background investigation. They do two things. They do these background investigations. They're collecting information. They don't make a judgment call. They don't say, this person seems on the up and up. We don't believe this person. Right. They hand over the information to the White House and to the senators. They're the ones who constitutionally are making the judgment of this person going to be nominated and confirmed. They also investigate federal crimes. There's obviously no federal crime at issue here.
Right.
So the FBI...
And 36 years later,
right.
It's hard to track any of this down. But but then it begs the other question. Shouldn't the Senate be inviting the witnesses to this thing, or the purported alleged witnesses to this event, and Kavanaugh into the hearing room?
Here's the interesting thing. They have been. The Democrats have been out there for 4 days in front of the televisions saying, we need to hear an investigation. Meanwhile, the Senate Republicans have actually been doing one. They have interviewed Judge Kavanaugh under penalty of felony about this. They've invited Dr. Ford to do this preliminary investigation. She didn't come. The Senate Democrats were invited to participate so they could question the witnesses. They have declined to cooperate whatsoever. They've actually received statements from two of the men who were alleged to be there under penalty of felony. Again, they've reached out to another one who hasn't responded yet. They reached out to the woman who on social media said that she had information about that. She refused to comment. So they've been doing everything they can on all sides to try to amass that evidence. So there is an investigation going on right now.
But there is precedent for an FBI investigation. We saw it in the Anita Hill case where the FBI did investigate. Now, that was a leaked tip to the FBI that it looks like they had already put aside, and then it was resurrected because it was leaked.
Yeah, I think the timeline's important here because this is how it happened with the Anita Hill investigation. It went to Senator Biden, who was chairman of the committee. He didn't do what Senator Feinstein did, didn't sit in it for 6 weeks and try to time it politically for him. He actually did the right thing, turned it over immediately to the White House, who said to the FBI, go and take these depositions effectively and do these interviews, and they did it confidentially, so it respected Anita Hill's privacy, it respected Justice Thomas's reputation, and any other witnesses they spoke to, all confidentially. After that came back and the White House judged that, okay, this is actually not really founded and not credible, that's when it leaked. And once it became public, they didn't do further investigation. We're at that point where it's just leaked, it's become public. They're doing exactly the same thing that they did back in 1991, which is, okay, now we're going to move and have this hearing so that the senators, because they're ultimately the ones, not the FBI. The FBI doesn't say red light, green light, we believe them, we don't. It's the senators who make that call. So they're the ones now doing this investigation, same as we did in 1991.
Senator Feinstein, who's the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, had this letter from Dr. Ford, the woman alleging abuse, since July. And she said she didn't make it public because she wasn't asked not to. She had this to say earlier this week when asked about Dr. Ford and the validity of that letter. Listen.
This is a woman, and I really believe, who's been profoundly impacted by this. Now, I can't say everything's truthful. I don't know.
Right. Your reaction, and what do you make of the curious timing of the drop here?
Well, look, the experiences Dr. Ford describes are horrible. But the evidence that's building up suggests that it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh who was involved. And it's been 30-some years, memories are fuzzy, I'm not sure, but she may well be sincere. However, when we look at someone who his history, everything we know about him, all the women at the time, even women who dated him at the time, are saying this isn't the kind of person he was. He categorically denies it. Unfortunately, what we see is the Senate Democrats are treating this not responsibly, like they think it's a credible or a serious allegation. They're treating it like a political football. It's ironic that the one person who's treated it with the seriousness that it merits is Senator Grassley. He didn't sit in it for 6 weeks. Within 24 hours, he had already scheduled a hearing, had reached out to try to speak to her and get more information, to ask her what other evidence she wants to try to help get. The Senate Democrats, I think, are the ones who are treating this improperly and using her as a political pawn.
We've seen a lot of character witnesses come forward. For Brett Kavanaugh, 65 women who knew him in high school came forward. They said, this is not the man we know. We stand by him. Similarly, the other night, CNN featured a classmate of the accuser, Christine Ford. This is Samantha Gary with Jim Acosta. Watch.
Was this the first time you had heard anything like that with respect to Judge Kavanaugh?
Absolutely. It was not the first time I've heard anything like that in terms of the community of women that I know, and not regarding him, but
those sorts of things went on.
A lot. One of the things that's been surprising to me as I've gotten involved in this in the last couple of days is how many women of my class have come forward to me in this last few days and said, I had similar experiences in high school, and this hits me very deeply. And it's very
not with Brett Kavanaugh, but with other boys.
Not with Brett Kavanaugh, but with other boys in our community, and we all feel that if we were in her shoes, we'd want to be taken seriously as well.
Your reaction?
I absolutely agree. I have friends who have had a similar experience, and they absolutely should be taken seriously. That type of behavior should never be allowed. However, that doesn't make the fact that there's a real problem with these kind of assaults happening does not make Judge Kavanaugh guilty of one. We need to make. I'm a mother of daughters and sons. I think we need to make sure we show deep respect for both men and women in these situations, and so it's important to have a very fair process going forward. That's what we're trying to hopefully will come out of Monday's hearing.
Look, I think all these accusers should be heard. I don't care who you are. You should be heard, present evidence, but the burden of proof has to be on the accuser, not the accused or the FBI or the investigators. They're not there to prove your accusation. You have to give some evidence of that or corroborating witnesses. They've decided, the Judiciary Committee, they will vote on Wednesday. Come hell or high water, whether she shows up Monday or not, a good idea?
Well, I think the problem is, as we were discussing before, the timing of this really suggests the Senate Democrats, again, they're not treating this as a real investigation. They're not even really treating her that seriously. They're treating her as a political pawn. They want to delay. Their goal here was to get Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation blocked altogether. And if they couldn't do that, at least delay it. They think that plays well politically for them.
Because you believe the Democrats knew back in July of this, and they didn't bring it up in the hearing.
And the rest of them even knew for at least a week before it came out. They did nothing to attempt to investigate or validate those claims at that time. I think we need to make sure that this isn't encouraged as a technique for how can we use these things politically. We need to take sexual assault seriously and not use it as a political weapon.
Very quickly, you at the Judicial Crisis Network are spending $1.5 million on a television campaign to support Kavanaugh's candidacy here, nomination. Is that a sign that you believe his nomination is in jeopardy?
No, we've been running ads talking about Judge Kavanaugh since he was nominated. I mean, this is something that is simply, in today's media-driven age, one of the ways of communicating with people, because we've learned that a nominee, him or herself, isn't really able to make those pitches. They get their opportunity before the Judiciary Committee hearing, but that's this one point in a many months process. Our group's mission is to be out there to defend judges like Judge Kavanaugh, who are faithful to the Constitution and laws and often are being attacked.
Will Brett Kavanaugh be the next Supreme Court Justice of the United States? Okay. Carrie Severino, thank you for being here. You can follow Carrie's work at the Judicial Crisis Network at judicialnetwork.com.